I didn't just mistake the Alpha King for a stripper. I demanded he take his pants off in a public hallway. Most women bow when they see Bram Thane. Most women tremble at the sheer, suffocating power radiating off his $6,000 suit. Me? I was the maid of honor from hell, 30 minutes behind schedule, and he was standing exactly where the entertainment was supposed to be. I didn't check his ID. I didn't check his aura. I just checked the hard ridges of his abs through his dress shirt and decided he was hired help. I dragged the most dominant predator in the city toward a room full of screaming women and ordered him to earn his tips. I expected a routine lap dance. What I got was a predator who looked at me like I was the main course. Welcome back to Raven's Library, where the romance is fierce and the alphas are complicated. Before we dive into today's story, let's do a quick roll call. Head down to the comments right now and tell me where in the world you are listening from. I love seeing how far our pack extends across the globe, so represent your city. And if you hate waiting for cliffhangers, hit that join button today. Our members get early access to every single upload and exclusive Raven loyalty badges to stand out in the comments. Support the library, skip the wait, and keep the romance coming. Now, grab your tea, get cozy, and let's turn the page. Chapter 1. The Suit. Take it off. I punctuated each word with a sharp, manicured poke to the stranger's chest. My finger hit a surface that felt less like flesh and more like a slab of heated marble wrapped in expensive Italian wool. He didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He just froze, his entire massive frame going rigid as he looked down at my hand, then up at my face. His eyes were a startling, swirling amber, the kind of eyes that didn't just look at you, they dissected you. Careful, he rumbled, the word vibrating so deep in his chest I felt it travel up my arm. Touch me again, and I might assume you're inviting trouble. I'm inviting you to do the job I paid $300 for, I snapped, checking the time on my phone. You are 30 minutes late. The bride is crying because she broke a nail, the champagne is warm, and if I don't get a shirtless man in that room in the next 60 seconds, I am going to leave a review that will scorch your agency to the ground. I looked him up and down, unimpressed by his hesitation, but admittedly impressed by the rest of him. He was huge. Not gym rat huge, but naturally predatory huge. Broad shoulders that strained the seams of a midnight blue suit jacket, thighs that looked like tree trunks, and a jawline so sharp it could slice bread. He smelled like rain, cedar, and something darker, like ozone before a lightning strike. Perfect. Sarah was going to lose her mind. Well, I huffed, crossing my arms over my chest. Don't just stand there looking pretty. We paid for the Alpha Experience package. Less brooding, more stripping. The stranger blinked. For a second, he looked genuinely baffled, as if I had just spoken to him in an alien language. Then, a slow, dangerous shift occurred. The confusion in those golden eyes melted away, replaced by a spark of dark amusement that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He took a step toward me. Then another. He didn't stop until he was looming over me, blocking out the light from the hallway sconces. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating off him, a furnace wrapped in silk. You think, he started, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a velvety purr that wrapped around my senses. You think I'm here for the party? I think you're stalling, I countered, refusing to back down. I tilted my chin up, forcing myself to hold his gaze. Look, I get it. It's part of the act, the reluctant alpha routine. Very sexy, very convincing, but we are on a schedule, buddy. So are you the stripper, or are you just some random model loitering in the hallway? He stared at me for a long, heavy beat. His gaze dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes. He wasn't looking at me like a client. He was looking at me like a puzzle he wanted to solve. Or break. I have been called many things, he murmured, reaching up to adjust one of his diamond cufflinks. Tyrant, king, monster, but stripper? He let out a low, rough sound that was half laugh, half growl. That is a first. Is that a yes or a no? I asked, tapping my foot. Because if you aren't the entertainment, you need to move. You're blocking the elevator. He didn't move. Instead, he leaned down. The air around us grew heavy, charged with a static electricity that made my skin tingle. It wasn't fear. It was a magnetic pull, a biological anchor hooking into my gut and tugging me forward. He brought his face inches from mine. I could smell the faint scent of scotch on his breath. It was intoxicating. I don't dance for crowds, little wolf, he whispered, the endearment sounding less like a pet name and more like a claim. I don't take orders, and I certainly don't take my clothes off for $300. Then why are you looking at me like that? I challenged, my breath hitching despite my best efforts to remain professional. A wicked smirk curled the corner of his mouth, revealing the hint of a white, sharp canine tooth. Because you are the first woman in a decade who hasn't lowered her eyes. He growled softly, his hand twitching at his side as if he wanted to reach out and grab me. If you want to see what's under this suit, you'll have to pay a much higher price. Private dance only. Chapter 2. The Realization. Before I could process the invitation, or the confusing mix of arousal and annoyance pooling in my stomach, the universe decided to deliver the punchline. The elevator doors behind the well-dressed stranger pinged open with a cheerful chime. Out stumbled a man who was clearly, undeniably, the person I had actually hired. He was wearing a studded leather vest that was 2 sizes too small, tearaway pants that rustled with every step, and he reeked of cheap body spray and desperation. "Sorry, I'm here," the newcomer panted, clutching a boombox against his hip. "Traffic on the bridge was a nightmare, but Magic Mike is ready to rock." I looked at the man in the leather vest. Then I looked back at the god in the Italian suit. The silence that stretched between the three of us was thick enough to choke on. The stranger in the suit slowly straightened up, his amber eyes shifting from me to the panting stripper. The amusement in his expression vanished, replaced by a cold, imperious boredom that lowered the temperature in the hallway by 10 degrees. He didn't speak. He just looked. The stripper in the leather vest froze mid-step. His eyes bulged as he took in the tall, dark figure standing in front of me. The color drained from his face so fast, I thought he was going to pass out. He dropped the boombox. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. Alpha King," the stripper stammered, his voice cracking. To my absolute horror, he didn't just apologize. He dropped to his knees. He actually bowed, his forehead pressing against the hideous hotel carpet. I didn't know you were on the floor, Your Majesty. Please, forgive the intrusion." Alpha King. The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. The air left my lungs. Bram Thane. I knew the name. Everyone knew the name. He owned the skyline. He owned the ground beneath the city. He owned the hotel we were standing in. He was the wealthiest, most dominant wolf in the hemisphere. Rumors said he could crush a business with a phone call and silence a room with a glance. And I had just poked him in the chest and ordered him to strip. I felt the blood rush to my face, not from shame, but from the sheer, catastrophic magnitude of my mistake. I had treated the most powerful predator in the continent like a gigolo. Bram ignored the groveling man on the floor completely. His attention snapped back to me, locking me in place. The amusement was back, dancing in those golden irises. He looked like a cat that had just been handed a particularly feisty mouse. "Get up," Bram said to the stripper, though his eyes never left mine. His voice was calm, bored, and terrifyingly authoritative. "Leave. You are paid for the hour. Go wait in the lobby." Yes, Alpha." The stripper scrambled backward on his hands and knees before jumping up and sprinting into the stairwell, leaving his boombox behind. We were alone again. "So," Bram drawled, taking a slow step toward me, closing the distance I had tried to maintain. "You were saying something about a review, scorching my agency to the ground?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but I dug my heels in. I wasn't going to bow. I wasn't going to grovel like the guy in the leather vest. If I was going down, I was going to go down with my dignity intact. "It was an honest mistake," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my hands were trembling slightly at my sides. "You were standing in the designated entertainment zone. You're excessively fit. You're wearing a suit that costs more than my car. It was a logical deduction." "Logical," he repeated, tasting the word. He stepped closer, invading my personal space until I was forced to tilt my head back to look at him. "Most people would be apologizing right now, Ms." He let the question hang, waiting, a command wrapped in velvet. "Veda," I said. I refused to give him my last name. He didn't own me. "Veda," he murmured. The way he said my name made my toes curl. It sounded like a caress and a threat all at once. "You have a very sharp tongue, Veda. I wonder if you're that bold with everyone, or if I'm just special." "Don't let it go to your head," I shot back, narrowing my eyes. "I treat everyone exactly how they deserve to be treated. And right now, you're just the guy keeping me from my job." He blinked, stunned. Then a low, rumbling laugh erupted from his chest, a sound of pure, unadulterated delight. "You're dismissing me? I'm the king, and you're dismissing me to go back to a room full of drunken bridesmaids?" "The bride needs me," I said, turning toward the door. "And unlike you, Your Majesty, I actually have to work for a living." "Wait." His hand shot out. He didn't grab me, but his palm slammed against the doorframe right next to my head, effectively caging me in. He leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of my ear, his scent overwhelming my senses. "You owe me, Veda," he whispered, the vibration traveling straight down my spine. "You insulted my honor. You objectified your king. I think I'm going to need some compensation." Chapter 3. The Chase. "I don't owe you anything other than a polite "excuse me," I said, ducking under his arm. I moved fast, fueled by adrenaline and the desperate need to put a solid oak door between me and the overwhelming pheromones rolling off him. Bram turned, leaning his back against the doorframe I had just escaped, crossing his arms over that expansive chest. He didn't chase me physically. He didn't have to. His presence filled the hallway so completely, it felt like I was wading through water. "You intrigue me," he stated simply. It wasn't a pickup line. It was a fact, delivered with the same certainty as a weather report. "Run along then, Veda. Go save your bride." I didn't look back. I grabbed the handle of the suite door, my heart racing like a trapped bird. But before I could turn the handle, I felt a weight slip into the side pocket of my blazer. I froze. I spun around. Bram was standing right behind me again. He moved with a silence that was unnatural, a predator's grace that belied his size. He had slipped something into my pocket. "What did you do?" I demanded, reaching into my pocket. My fingers brushed against cold metal. I pulled it out. It was a black card. No, not just a black card. It was heavy, made of solid titanium, with no numbers, just a golden wolf crest embossed on the front and a signature on the back. Bram Thane. "A tip," he said, his lips curling into that infuriatingly arrogant smirk, "since you didn't get the show you paid for." "I can't take this," I said, holding it out to him immediately. This is ridiculous. Take it back." "I don't take things back," he said softly. "Buy the bride another bottle of champagne, or buy yourself a new dress, something without that stain on the hem." I looked down. There was a tiny drop of wine on my skirt. He had noticed a speck of dirt while I was busy having a panic attack. The level of detail he absorbed was terrifying. "I am not a charity case," I snapped, jamming the card toward his chest, "and I am not someone you can just pay off because you're bored. Take it." He caught my wrist. His grip was gentle but firm, warm skin against my pulse point. The contact sent a shockwave through me that nearly made my knees buckle. His thumb brushed over the sensitive skin of my inner wrist, sending sparks dancing up my arm. "It's not charity, Veda," he murmured, his eyes darkening, the amber swirling with gold. "It's an investment." "In what?" I breathed, unable to pull away. "In the next time we meet," he promised. "There won't be a next time." I lied. We both knew it was a lie. The pool between us was already a tangible thing, a tether stretching tight. "There is always a next time when I want there to be," he said. He released my wrist slowly, letting his fingers trail down my palm before dropping his hand. "Go, before I decide to collect that private dance you asked for." I scrambled into the suite and slammed the door behind me, leaning against it, gasping for air. The noise of the bachelorette party washed over me. Pop music, laughter, the sound of glass clinking. It felt a million miles away. I looked down at my hand. I was still clutching the heavy black titanium card. He had marked me, not with a bite, but with his influence. "Veda, where is the stripper?" Sarah yelled from the couch, waving a half-empty bottle of Prosecco. He canceled," I choked out, sliding the metal card deep into my pocket where it burned against my hip. "But don't worry, I handled it." I handled nothing. I had just started a war with a king, and I had the sinking feeling he was already planning the second battle. Chapter 4. The Refusal. The next morning, the titanium card sat on my desk at elite events like a small metallic bomb. It mocked me. It was sleek, heavy, and radiated the kind of wealth that made my stomach turn. I had stared at it for 3 hours. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw amber eyes and felt the ghost of a thumb stroking my wrist. "You're being ridiculous," I muttered to myself. I grabbed my oversized shears, the ones I used for cutting thick floral wire. With a grim sense of satisfaction, I positioned the titanium card between the blades. It took 2 hands and a significant amount of grunt work, but the metal finally groaned and snapped in half. The golden wolf crest was severed right down the middle. I shoved the pieces into a standard envelope, addressed it to Thane Enterprises HQ, and dropped it in the outgoing mail bin. There, I dusted my hands off. Message sent. I am not for sale. I turned back to my computer, ready to focus on the Johnson anniversary gala, when my office door flew open. My boss, Mr. Henderson, stood there. He looked like he had just seen a ghost, or perhaps the IRS. He was sweating profusely, his tie crooked. "Veda," he wheezed, clutching the doorframe. "Conference room, now." "What's wrong?" I asked, standing up. Did the caterer quit again? "Worse. Better. I don't know." Henderson stammered, his eyes wide. "We have a walk-in client, a VIP. He specifically asked for you." He says he wants to plan a birthday event. Who walks in for an event consult without an appointment? I frowned, grabbing my notepad. "Did you tell him I'm booked until March?" "I told him you were available immediately," Henderson practically shrieked. "Veda, do not mess this up. Do not look him in the eye if you can avoid it. Just say yes to whatever he wants." "Mr. Henderson, breathe," I said, walking past him. "It's just a client. I can handle high maintenance." I marched down the hallway to the glass-walled conference room. I was ready for a bridezilla. I was ready for a demanding corporate exec. I pushed the door open. Bram Thane was sitting at the head of the table. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He was wearing a dark gray button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that were corded with muscle and dusted with dark hair. He looked relaxed, powerful, and utterly out of place in our beige mid-range office. He was spinning a pen between his fingers. When I entered, the pen stopped. He looked up, and that same devastating smirk hit me full force. "You," I exhaled, letting the door click shut behind me. "What are you doing here?" "I told you," Bram said smoothly, leaning back in the chair. The leather creaked under his shifting weight. "I needed to see a professional. I have a very important birthday coming up. My own." "You have an entire team of assistants to plan parties," I said, not moving from the door. "You don't need elite events. We do retirement parties and mid-budget weddings." "I don't want a team," Bram said, his eyes dropping to my pocket, as if checking for the card I had just destroyed. "I want someone with vision. Someone who isn't afraid to tell the king he's late." "I mailed your card back," I blurted out, "cut in half." Bram didn't get angry. His grin widened, transforming into something wolfish and pleased. "I know. My security team alerted me the moment it entered the postal system. You have spirit, Veda. Most women would have gone to Cartier." He stood up. The room suddenly felt very small. "I'm not most women," I said, gripping my notepad like a shield. "I'm counting on it," he said, tossing a thick file onto the table. It landed with a heavy slap. "This is the contract. You are planning my birthday gala. Exclusive rights. Unlimited budget." "And if I say no?" "You won't," Bram said softly, walking around the table until he was standing right in front of me. He smelled of rain and power, drowning out the smell of office coffee. "Because I just bought the building, Veda. Technically, I'm your landlord, and I'd hate to have to raise the rent on poor Mr. Henderson." My jaw dropped. "You bought the building? To get a party planner?" "To get the one I wanted," he corrected, leaning in close, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. "I told you, Veda, I enjoy the chase, but I always catch what I'm chasing." Chapter 5. The Office Raid. "You cannot be serious," I said, staring at the man who was currently sucking all the oxygen out of my tiny office. "You bought a 40-story skyscraper because I cut up your credit card?" "I needed to diversify my real estate portfolio anyway." Bram shrugged, looking around my workspace with critical eyes. He picked up a stapler, examined it like it was an alien artifact, and set it back down. "And I needed to ensure my event planner was accessible." He moved deeper into the room. My office was not built for men like Bram Thane. It was built for stressed interns and stacks of wedding binders. Bram was too tall, too broad, and too expensive for the space. When he walked past my filing cabinet, his shoulder brushed the metal. When he turned, his thigh bumped my desk. He made the room feel like a closet. "This isn't happening," I muttered, sitting back down in my chair to put some barrier between us. "I am not planning your birthday. I have clients, real clients. Mrs. Gable needs her poodle's bat mitzvah planned by Friday." "Cancel it," Bram said, dismissing Mrs. Gable's poodle with a wave of his hand. "I'll pay for the dog's therapy. Focus on me, Veda." He didn't take the guest chair. Instead, he moved around to my side of the desk. My heart rate spiked. He hopped up, sitting on the corner of my desk with a casual, predatory grace. The wood creaked in protest under his solid weight. One of his polished dress shoes rested on the floor. The other dangled near my knee. He was sitting on my paperwork. "You are sitting on the invoice for the Johnson Gala," I said, pointing at his thigh. "Boring," he declared, leaning over me. He smelled of sandalwood and that crisp, cold scent of winter air. "Tell me about my party. What is your vision? Gold statues? Ice sculptures of my face?" "I was thinking a bouncy castle and a mute button," I retorted, rolling my chair back slightly to escape his encroaching heat. "Since you act like a toddler with a credit card." I expected him to growl. I expected him to exercise that alpha command everyone whispered about. Instead, his eyes crinkled. He laughed. It was a genuine, warm sound that did terrible things to my resolve. "Careful," he murmured, leaning down so his face was level with mine. "You're testing the limits of my patience, Veda, and I have very little patience." "Then fire me," I challenged, looking him dead in the eye. "Evict me. Go find someone who is impressed by your title." "I don't want someone impressed," he whispered, his voice dropping to a gravelly low that vibrated in my chest. "I want you. You look at me and you don't see a checkbook. You see a headache." "A massive headache," I agreed, breathless. "Good. Keep looking." He reached out, his large hand hovering near my face. For a second, I thought he was going to touch me. I wanted him to touch me. The air between us crackled, thick with unspoken desire. My body was betraying me, leaning toward him, craving the contact of a man I barely knew. Then he plucked a pen from the holder behind me. "We have work to do," he said, clicking the pen. "I need a venue inspection. Immediately." "I have a meeting in 20 minutes, I argued, glancing at the clock. "Not anymore," Bram said, standing up. The loss of his proximity was physically jarring, leaving me cold. He buttoned his jacket, instantly transforming back from the flirtatious man into the icy king. "Grab your coat, Veda. We're leaving." "Where are we going? The Ritz? The Plaza?" He smirked, walking to the door and holding it open. The entire office floor fell silent as he appeared. My coworkers stared, slack-jawed, as the Alpha King waited for me. "Think bigger," he said. "Get your coat." Chapter 6. The Setup. I didn't get my coat. I got my bag, my tablet, and a severe attitude problem. I marched out of the building, ignoring the terrified looks from Mr. Henderson, who was currently hiding behind a potted fern. Bram walked beside me, his stride long and effortless, forcing me to practically jog to keep up. A sleek black SUV was waiting at the curb. The driver, a burly man with a scar running down his neck, opened the door instantly. "Where is the venue?" I asked as I slid into the leather interior. It smelled like new car and expensive cologne. Bram's scent. "It's a surprise," Bram said, sliding in next to me. The door thudded shut, sealing us in a soundproof bubble of luxury. "I hate surprises," I muttered, pulling up my calendar on my tablet. "If we go to the convention center, I'm quitting. The acoustics are terrible." Bram didn't answer. He just watched me. He sat with his legs spread, taking up more than his fair share of the seat, his arm draped across the back of the leather behind my head. He wasn't touching me, but he was surrounding me. The drive was long. We left the city center, the skyscrapers fading into the rearview mirror. We passed the suburbs. We passed the industrial district. "Bank," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Where are we going?" "Trust issues?" he teased, looking at his phone. "Kidnapping concerns," I corrected. "We are heading toward the marshlands. Unless you want a swamp-themed party, we are going the wrong way." "Relax, little wolf," he said, glancing at me. "I promised you a venue inspection. I never said the venue was in this state." My stomach dropped. "What?" The car turned abruptly, passing through a high-security gate. We weren't at a swamp. We were at a private airfield. My eyes widened as the SUV rolled onto the tarmac. There, gleaming under the afternoon sun, was a jet. Not a small Cessna, but a massive, sleek Gulfstream painted in matte black, with the same gold wolf crest on the tail. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Absolutely not. I am not getting on a plane." "The venue is in Paris," Bram said casually as the car came to a stop near the stairs. I felt like Italian food for lunch, but French for dinner. "I didn't bring my passport," I yelled as the driver opened my door. "I have it," Bram said, stepping out and offering me a hand. "I had my team retrieve it from your apartment while you were arguing with me in your office." "You broke into my apartment?" I shrieked, ignoring his hand and scrambling out of the car. "We unlocked it professionally," he corrected, looking unbothered. "Come on, Veda. The pilot has a schedule." "I am not going to Paris with a man I met yesterday." I stood my ground on the tarmac, the wind whipping my hair around my face. "This is insane. You are insane." Bram stopped on the stairs of the jet. He turned back to look at me. The wind caught his tie, and for a moment, he looked like a god of storms. "You wanted to know who I was," he called out over the sound of the engines spooling up. "You wanted to know the man, not the king. Well, the man wants to take you to dinner. Are you coming, or are you going to let fear make your decisions for you?" It was a challenge. He knew exactly which buttons to push. He knew I couldn't resist a dare. I gritted my teeth, adjusted my blazer, and marched up the stairs. "If the food is bad, I'm billing you for my time." Bram smiled, a true, victorious smile that made my knees weak. He followed me in, and the heavy door hissed shut, sealing us inside. "Buckle up, Veda," he whispered as the locks engaged. "You can't walk away at 30,000 feet. Chapter 7. No-Fly Zone. The interior of the jet was nicer than my apartment, nicer than my parents' house, nicer than any building I had ever set foot in. Cream leather seats, gold accents, a full bar, and a bed in the back that I was aggressively avoiding looking at. I sat in one of the captain's chairs, gripping the armrests until my knuckles turned white. The takeoff had been smooth, but the reality of the situation was settling in. I was trapped in a metal tube in the sky with a billionaire werewolf who seemed obsessed with provoking me. "Champagne?" Bram asked, standing by the bar. He looked infuriatingly steady, balancing a crystal flute as the plane banked. "Water," I said stiffly, "and a parachute." He chuckled, walking over and placing a bottle of Evian on my table. He sat in the chair directly facing me, his knees inches from mine. "You're tense," he observed. "I'm abducted," I corrected, cracking the water open. "There is a difference." "I prefer whisked away," he said, sipping his drink. "Tell me, Veda, why do you fight me on everything? Most people would be enjoying the view." "I'm not most people." I repeated the line from yesterday. "And I don't care about your money, Bram. I care that you think you can just move people around like chess pieces. I have a life down there. I have a cat. I have deadlines." "I'll buy you a new cat," he said dismissively. "That is exactly the problem," I snapped, leaning forward. "You think you can just replace things. You think value comes from a price tag. You don't know anything about real value." Bram's expression shifted. The playful smirk vanished, replaced by a contemplative frown. He set his glass down. "Then teach me." "What?" "Teach me," he said softly, leaning forward, mirroring my posture. "Tell me what matters to you. Tell me what makes Veda tick." I opened my mouth to answer, to tell him that respect mattered, that earning things mattered. But before I could speak, the plane dropped. It wasn't a little bump. It was a violent, stomach-churning lurch. The champagne flute slid off the table and shattered. I gasped, grabbing the armrests. The plane shuddered again, tilting sharply to the left. "Turbulence," Bram said instantly. His voice wasn't scared, it was commanded. Another drop, deeper this time. The lights flickered. "Oh God," I whispered, squeezing my eyes shut. I hated flying. I hated falling. Suddenly, a warm, heavy weight covered my hands. I opened my eyes. Bram had unbuckled. He was kneeling on the floor between my legs, his large hands covering mine on the armrests, anchoring me. "Look at me," he ordered. His voice was calm, steady, a rock in the middle of the chaos. I looked at him. His face was inches from mine. His amber eyes were glowing slightly, the wolf within him rising to meet the threat. "It's just air," he said, his thumbs rubbing over my knuckles. "I've got you. Nothing is going to touch you while I am here. Do you understand?" "We're falling," I squeaked. "We are flying," he corrected, "and I am not going to let you fall." The plane bucked again, throwing me forward. My forehead collided with his shoulder. His arms wrapped around me instantly, locking me against his chest. He was solid, immovable warmth. And then I felt it. A spark. It started where my cheek pressed against his neck. A buzz of electricity, sharp and hot, zipping through my nervous system. It wasn't static. It was him. It was the biological recognition, the mate bond waking up and roaring to life. I pulled back, gasping, looking up at him. Bram was staring at me, his pupils blown so wide his eyes were almost black. He felt it too. The air between us wasn't just thin from altitude. It was heavy, with a sudden, suffocating attraction. "Veda," he breathed, his voice rough. His hand moved up, cupping my jaw, his thumb brushing my bottom lip. The plane stabilized, the turbulence was gone. But the storm inside the cabin had just begun. Chapter 8. The Dinner Date. The turbulence passed, but the shaking in my hands didn't. I pulled away from Bram as soon as the plane leveled out, scrambling back into my seat like I'd just touched a live wire. My skin was humming. My cheek, the spot that had pressed against his neck, felt scalded. "Adrenaline," I muttered, smoothing my skirt, refusing to look at him. "It's just adrenaline. Fight or flight response." "Is that what you think?" Bram asked. He hadn't moved. He was still kneeling on the carpet, watching me with eyes that were dark, hungry, and terrifyingly focused. "Because I don't feel like fighting, Veda. And I certainly don't feel like fleeing." "Well, I do," I snapped, grabbing my water bottle. "So let's just land, look at this venue, and get me back before my cat files a missing person report." Bram slowly stood up, the predator grace returning as he adjusted his cuffs. He didn't push the issue. He didn't have to. The air in the cabin had changed. The oxygen had been replaced with something thicker, something that tasted like ozone and inevitability. When we landed in Paris, it was raining. Not a drizzle, but a cinematic, romantic downpour that blurred the lights of the city into streaks of gold and red. A car was waiting on the tarmac, and 20 minutes later, we were seated at a table that cost more than my car. The restaurant was tucked away in Montmartre, a glass-walled enclosure offering a panoramic view of the Eiffel Tower. It was breathtaking. It was perfect. And it was annoying the hell out of me. "You're frowning," Bram noted, picking up the menu. Most women smile when I take them to Paris. "I told you," I said, ignoring the view to glare at him. "I'm not your date, Bram. I'm your employee. This is a business trip. Where's the venue we're supposed to be inspecting?" "We're in it," he said smoothly. "I was thinking of renting this entire restaurant for the pre-party brunch. What do you think?" "I think it's too small," I lied. It was perfect. "And the lighting is bad." A waiter appeared, looking impeccable in a white tuxedo. He turned immediately to Bram, bowing slightly. He didn't even glance at me. "Bonsoir, Monsieur Thane," the waiter said in English, his tone dripping with deference. "We have prepared the tasting menu for you. Shall I bring the wine list?" "Yes," Bram said, not looking up from the menu. "And for the lady, bring the filet mignon, rare, no sauce, and a glass of the house red. She doesn't have a sophisticated palate for the vintage reserves." My spine snapped straight. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance. He was doing it again, treating me like a doll he could dress and feed. "Excusez-moi," I interrupted, my voice sharp. The waiter blinked, finally looking at me. Bram looked up, an eyebrow raised. "Je ne prendrai pas le filet," I said in flawless, rapid-fire French. I had spent a semester in Lyon, a fact Bram evidently hadn't uncovered in his background check. "Et je déteste la viande saignante. Je prendrai le canard à l'orange, s'il vous plaît. Et pour le vin, apportez-moi le Château Margaux 2015. Je crois que le palais de Monsieur Taine est celui qui a besoin d'éducation." Translation: I will not have the filet, and I hate rare meat. I will have the duck à l'orange, please, and for the wine, bring me the Château Margaux 2015. I believe Mr. Thane's palate is the one that needs education. The waiter's jaw dropped. He looked from me to Bram, terrified. Bram didn't look angry. He looked stunned. He stared at me, the menu forgotten in his hand. The shock on his face slowly morphed into something else, a slow, burning heat that started in his eyes and radiated outward. "You speak French," he stated. "I speak 3 languages," I corrected, handing the menu to the paralyzed waiter. "Just because I plan parties doesn't mean I'm an idiot, Bram. Stop trying to order my life from me." Bram signaled the waiter to leave. As soon as we were alone, he leaned across the table. The candlelight flickered in his amber eyes. "You fight me on the plane. You fight me at dinner," he whispered, his voice rough with desire. "I have never met anyone who fights so hard to not be taken care of." "I don't need a keeper," I said, my heart pounding. "No," he agreed, reaching out to touch the back of my hand. This time, I didn't pull away. "You don't need a keeper. You need a partner. And God help me, Veda, I think I'm applying for the job." Chapter 9. The Jealous Alpha. The return trip was a blur of exhaustion and confusing, heavy silences. We landed back in the city at 4 a.m. Bram had his driver drop me off, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he was going to kiss me goodnight. He didn't. He just waited until I was safely inside my building before the SUV pulled away. I thought I was safe. I thought I had survived the site visit. I was wrong. The next evening, I was standing in the ballroom of the Grand Hotel. I wasn't there as a guest. I was there because Bram had texted me 3 words: "Inspection, tonight, wear black." It turned out the inspection was actually the annual Shifter Charity Gala, and because I was technically his planner, I had to be there to observe the flow of the event. I wore the only black formal dress I owned, a sleek, floor-length silk number with a slit that went a little too high up my thigh. Bram had found me the second I walked in. He hadn't left my side since. "You're hovering," I muttered, sipping a glass of champagne as we stood near a pillar. "I am supervising," Bram corrected. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He looked lethal. Every head in the room turned when he moved. "You're my employee. I need to make sure you're taking notes." "I'm taking notes on your ego," I retorted. "It barely fits in the room." Funny. Just then, a man approached us. He was handsome in a slick, oily sort of way. He had blonde hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. I recognized him. Julian Ford, the alpha of the Western Pack. A rival. "Bram," Julian said, his voice smooth. He ignored the king entirely and turned his gaze on me. His eyes raked over my body, lingering on the slit of my dress. "And who is this delicious creature? I didn't know you brought snacks to the gala." I bristled. "I am not a snack. I'm the event planner." "A working girl," Julian smirked, stepping closer. He reached out, his fingers aiming for my bare arm. "I have some events that need planning. Maybe we could discuss your rates in private?" The air temperature dropped to sub-zero instantly. Before Julian's fingers could graze my skin, a hand clamped onto my waist. It wasn't gentle. It was heavy, possessive, and radiated heat like a branding iron. Bram pulled me flush against his side. The movement was so sudden I gasped, my hands landing on his chest to steady myself. "She's busy," Bram said. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low, guttural rumble that sounded like rocks grinding together deep underground. It was the voice of a wolf on the edge of violence. Julian froze. He looked at Bram's hand on my waist, then up at Bram's eyes. I looked up too. Bram's eyes were glowing. Not a subtle flicker, but a bright, molten gold. He was staring at Julian with a look of such concentrated menace that the other alpha actually took a step back. "Busy," Julian stammered, his confident smile vanishing. "Right, of course. My mistake, Alpha King." "Walk away," Bram commanded, "before I forget that this is a charity event." Julian turned and practically ran into the crowd. My heart was hammering against my ribs, partly from fear, partly from the overwhelming rush of power radiating from the man holding me. "You can let go now," I whispered, though I didn't try to move. Bram didn't let go. His grip tightened, his thumb digging into the silk of my dress, pressing into my hip bone. He looked down at me, the gold slowly fading from his irises, but the darkness remaining. "He looked at you," Bram growled, his jaw tight. "He looked at you like you were for sale." "I can handle guys like Julian," I said, trying to sound brave. "I deal with creeps all the time." "Not anymore," Bram said. He leaned down, his breath hot against my ear. "No one looks at you like that while I am breathing Veda. You wanted to know my hobbies? This is one of them. Protecting what is mine." "I'm not yours," I breathed, my voice trembling. Bram pulled back just enough to look me in the eye. "Keep telling yourself that, little wolf, but your pulse says otherwise." Chapter 10. The Tabloid Scandal. The high of the gala crashed and burned exactly 6 hours later. I woke up to my phone vibrating off the nightstand. It was buzzing so hard it sounded like an angry hornet. I groaned, rolling over and squinting at the screen. 32 missed calls, 47 texts, and a voicemail from my mother asking if I was pregnant. "What?" I croaked, sitting up. I opened my news feed. My blood turned to ice. There, splashed across the front page of the City Chronicles, was a high-definition photo from last night. It was the moment Bram had pulled me against him. His hand was on my waist, his face inches from mine, his eyes glowing with possessiveness. I looked small, fragile, and completely swept away. But it was the headline that made me gag. "The King's New Toy. Alpha Bram Caught with Unknown Human Mistress." The subheadline was worse. "From waitress to wallet chaser? Who is the mystery woman warming the Alpha's bed?" "Mistress," I whispered, the word tasting like ash. Toy. I had spent 5 years building elite events. I had clawed my way up from fetching coffee to managing galas. I was respected. I was professional. And in one night, Bram Thane had turned me into a punchline. I didn't cry. I got angry. A cold, hard fury that settled deep in my gut. I didn't bother showering. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, marched out of my apartment, and hailed a cab. "Thane Tower," I snapped at the driver. 20 minutes later, I was storming through the marble lobby of his headquarters. Security tried to stop me. I held up my phone with the photo on it and snarled, "If you don't let me up, I'm going to give an exclusive interview to TMZ about your boss's erectile dysfunction." The guard paled and swiped his card for the elevator. I rode the lift to the top floor, the numbers ticking up like a countdown to an explosion. When the doors opened, I bypassed the 3 assistants and kicked open the double mahogany doors to his office. Bram was on the phone, standing by the window looking out at the city he owned. He turned as the doors banged against the wall. He looked fresh, rested, and annoyingly perfect in a crisp white shirt. "I'll call you back," he said calmly, hanging up. He looked at me, taking in my disheveled hair and furious expression. A small smile played on his lips. "Good morning, Veda. I usually prefer you in silk, but the angry chic look works too." I marched across the room and slammed my phone down on his desk, the screen displaying the headline. "Fix it," I seethed. Bram glanced at the phone. He didn't look upset. He barely looked interested. "The press is like a pack of hyenas," he shrugged. "They feed on scraps. Ignore it. It will blow over in a week." "Ignore it!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "They are calling me a toy, Bram, a mistress. I have clients calling to cancel because they think I'm sleeping my way to the top. I built my reputation brick by brick, and you torched it because you couldn't keep your hands to yourself." Bram's smile faded. He walked around the desk, approaching me slowly. "Veda, no one whose opinion matters believes that." "My opinion matters!" I yelled, poking him in the chest, hard. "And I care. You don't get it, do you? You live in a world where you can buy this silence. I don't. This isn't a game to me. This is my life." "I know," he said, catching my hand before I could poke him again. His grip was tight. "And I will handle it. I'll have them retract the story." "And say what?" I challenged, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. "That I'm just the party planner? That the king has no interest in me?" Bram went still. He looked down at me, his expression unreadable, his thumb tracing the pulse on my wrist. "No," he said softly. "I won't lie. I won't tell them I have no interest in you." "Then what are you going to tell them?" I whispered. "That they got the title wrong," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous velvet growl. "They called you a toy. They should have called you the queen." I stared at him, my breath hitching. "I don't want to be your queen, Bram. I just want to be Veda." "Too bad," he murmured, pulling me a step closer, "because the world already knows you belong to me. Now, the only question is, when will you admit it to yourself?" Chapter 11. The Midnight Confession. I didn't storm out of his office this time. I retreated. After Bram dropped the queen bomb, I realized I was fighting a war I didn't have the ammunition for. He was operating on a level of certainty that terrified me. I grabbed my purse, ignored his offer of a ride, and took the subway home. I needed the noise, the grime, the smell of reality to scrub the scent of expensive cologne and power off my skin. I spent the rest of the evening ignoring my phone. It buzzed on the kitchen counter every 10 minutes like a persistent heartbeat. Buzz. "I'm not looking," I told my cat Barnaby, who was currently judging me from atop the refrigerator. Buzz. "He can wait. Kings are used to waiting, right?" "No, wait. They aren't. That's the point." By midnight, the buzzing stopped. The silence that followed was infinitely worse. I was scrubbing my bathtub. Stress cleaning is a valid coping mechanism. When a knock echoed through my apartment. It wasn't the polite tap of a neighbor. It was 3 solid, authoritative thuds. I froze, clutching a bottle of bleach. I knew who it was. My pulse knew who it was. I walked to the door, peering through the peephole. Bram. He was leaning against the doorframe, looking exhausted. His tie was undone, hanging loose around his neck. His top button was popped. He looked less like a monarch and more like a man who had walked across the city. I opened the door, leaving the chain on. "Go away, Bram. I have bleach, and I'm not afraid to use it." He looked through the crack, a weary smile touching his lips. "Chemical warfare? That's a new one." Open the door, Veda. No. You ruined my reputation today. You don't get late-night privileges. I didn't come to argue, he said quietly. He held up a white paper bag. It was greasy at the bottom. I brought peace offerings, pot stickers from that place on 4th Street, the one you said had the best dumplings in the city. I hesitated. The one with the spicy dipping sauce? Extra spicy, he confirmed. I had to threaten the chef to get them this late. You threatened a chef for dumplings? I negotiated aggressively, he corrected. Veda, please. I don't want to be alone tonight, and I can't go back to the tower. It's too quiet. There was something in his voice, a crack in the armor. It wasn't a command, it was a confession. I slid the chain off. Bram stepped inside. He seemed too big for my hallway, his shoulders brushing the coats hanging on the rack. He placed the bag on my small, wobbly kitchen table and looked around. It was the first time he'd been in my space without breaking in or judging it. It's small, he noted, not critically, just observing. It's cozy, I defended, grabbing plates. We call it charming in the real estate listings. He sat down on one of my mismatched wooden chairs. He looked out of place, a masterpiece painting hanging in a garage, but he didn't seem to mind. He opened the containers. I hate the headlines too, he said suddenly, breaking the silence. I paused, chopsticks in hand. You acted like you didn't care. I have to act like I don't care, Bram said, looking down at the food. If I show weakness, the sharks circle. If I show anger, the stocks drop. I am a brand, Veda. I stopped being a person a long time ago. He looked up at me, his amber eyes guarded. Until I met a woman who thought I was a stripper. I really thought you were, I admitted, a small smile tugging at my lips. You have the strut. I do not strut, he grumbled, though his eyes softened. I stalk. Whatever you say, Your Majesty, I teased, popping a dumpling into my mouth. For the next hour, we didn't talk about the bond, or the scandal, or the claim. We just ate. We argued about bad movies. He told me he secretly loved trashy reality TV because it made him feel better about his own dramatic family. For the first time, I wasn't sitting with the Alpha King. I was sitting with Bram, and that was infinitely more dangerous. Chapter 12. Domestic Bliss. Your faucet is dripping, Bram said. We had finished the food. The mood had shifted from tense to a strange, warm domesticity that was settling over the room like a heavy blanket. I know, I sighed, leaning back in my chair. It's been dripping for 3 months. The super says he needs a part from 1974, and it's on back order. Bram stood up. He took off his suit jacket, draping it over the back of the chair. Then he unbuttoned his cuffs and rolled his sleeves up. My mouth went dry. Forearms. Why were forearms so attractive? The muscles flexed as he moved, the dark hair dusting his skin, the thick veins running down to his large, capable hands. It was distracting. Do you have a wrench? He asked. Under the sink, I pointed, trying not to stare. Bram knelt on my linoleum floor, the king of the city, on his knees in my kitchen, reaching into the darkness of my cabinet. There was a clanking sound, a few grunts of effort, and then the sound of metal twisting against metal. Pass me a towel, he called out. I grabbed a dish towel and handed it to him. Our fingers brushed. The spark wasn't a spark this time. It was a jolt. I gasped, pulling my hand back. The lights in the kitchen flickered. My toaster actually buzzed. Bram froze. He slowly backed out from under the sink, standing up to his full height. He wiped his hands on the towel, his eyes locked on mine. He felt it too. The air in the kitchen had suddenly become thick, humid, and heavy. "Fixed," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Thank you," I whispered. You're handy." "I like fixing things," he murmured, taking a step toward me. "I like making things work the way they're supposed to." He tossed the towel onto the counter. He was standing too close. The kitchen was too small. The scent of him, rain, spice, and that underlying musk of alpha was suddenly everywhere. It filled my nose, my lungs, my head. "Veda," he said. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face. "Bram, don't," I warned, though my voice lacked any real conviction. My body was leaning toward him, drawn by a magnetic force I couldn't see, but could definitely feel. "You have flour on your cheek," he lied. His thumb grazed my cheekbone. Heat exploded. It wasn't just warmth. It was a biological fire that roared through my veins, setting every nerve ending alight. My knees actually buckled. Bram caught me, his arm wrapped around my waist, hauling me up against his chest. He was hard, solid, and scorching hot. "Steady," he growled, his voice vibrating against my ribs. "I'm fine," I lied, gripping his biceps to stay upright. "Just tired." "You're not tired," Bram whispered, lowering his head until his nose brushed the sensitive spot behind my ear. He inhaled deeply, a ragged, desperate sound. "You're reacting. Your wolf knows who I am, even if you refuse to admit it." "I don't have a wolf," I reminded him, my head falling back involuntarily to give him better access. "I'm human." "It doesn't matter," he murmured, his lips grazing my skin, sending shivers cascading down my spine. "The soul recognizes its other half, and right now, your soul is screaming my name." Chapter 13. The Heat. The room was spinning. It wasn't the wine, I hadn't had any, it was him. The heat coming off Bram was unnatural. It was a furnace blast, radiating from his skin and soaking into mine. But the terrifying part was that the heat was coming from me, too. My skin felt tight, overly sensitive. The friction of my cotton shirt against my stomach felt like sandpaper. And the smell. 5 minutes ago, he smelled good. Now, he smelled like survival. He smelled like the only water in a desert. My brain was fogging over, replaced by a singular pounding instinct. Closer. More. "Bram," I gasped, trying to push him away, but my hands just curled into his shirt, pulling him closer instead. What is happening?" Bram went rigid against me. A low growl started deep in his throat, a sound that was pure animal. He pulled back, gripping my shoulders. His eyes were no longer amber. They were solid, glowing gold. The pupils were slits. "The heat," he gritted out, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle ticked in his cheek. "It's starting. I didn't think it would happen this fast." "What heat?" I panted, feeling sweat bead on my forehead. "I'm not a shifter. Humans don't go into heat." "You do when you're fated to an alpha of my bloodline," he said, his voice strained. He looked like he was in physical pain. He released my shoulders and took a step back, putting distance between us. "The bond is forcing it. It's trying to sync our cycles, to ensure we mate." The word hung in the air, heavy and wet. Mate. My stomach clenched with a sharp pang of desire so intense it made me whimper. Bram heard the sound. His head snapped up. He looked at me with a hunger that was terrifying. He looked like he wanted to devour me whole. "Veda," he warned, backing up until he hit the counter. "You need to leave the room. Go to your bedroom. Lock the door." "I can't," I whispered. And I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move away from him. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to bridge the gap. Bram, it hurts. I know, he groaned, running a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect style. It hurts me too. It feels like I'm burning alive. That's why you need to go. Why? I took a stumbling step toward him. Because my control is hanging by a thread. He snarled, his voice dropping into a distorted dual-tone growl that was half man, half wolf. If you come any closer, Veda, I won't be able to stop. I won't ask for permission. I will take you right here on this kitchen floor, and I won't let you up until I've put a mark on your neck that will never fade. He looked at me, his chest heaving. Run, he commanded, his eyes blazing. Run, little wolf, before the monster gets out. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my throat. The logical part of my brain screamed, danger. The rest of me screamed, yes. I didn't run. I took another step forward. I'm not afraid of you, I whispered, the lie tasting like sugar on my tongue. Bram let out a roar of frustration. He moved faster than my eyes could track. 1 second he was by the sink. The next he had me pinned against the refrigerator, his hands slamming into the metal on either side of my head, trapping me. You should be, he hissed, his face inches from mine, his canines lengthening into sharp points. Because I am done being a gentleman. Chapter 14. The Panic. The refrigerator was cold against my back, but the man pressing into my front was molten lava. Bram didn't kiss me. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling so deeply the sound was ragged, desperate, like a drowning man finding air. His hands were everywhere, gripping my waist, tangling in my hair, pinning me to the stainless steel with a possession that was absolute. Mine. He growled against my skin. The vibration went straight to my core, shattering my resolve. You smell like rain. You smell like my rain. My hands lifted. I wanted to push him away. I needed to push him away. My brain was screaming that this was wrong, that this was biology hijacking my free will. I was Veda. I was the woman who cut up credit cards and negotiated catering contracts. I wasn't a slave to pheromones. But my hands didn't push. They grabbed the lapels of his shirt and pulled him closer. Bram, I whimpered, my head falling back, exposing my throat. It was an instinctive submission I didn't know I was capable of. Yes, he hissed, his lips grazing the sensitive pulse point under my jaw. Give in, Veda. Stop fighting. It's easier if you just let go. Easier. That word cut through the haze like a knife. Easier to submit. Easier to be the king's toy. Easier to let the billionaire alpha claim me and solve all my problems with a single bite. I looked up at the ceiling, gasping for air. I saw the flickering light bulb he had just fixed. It was mundane. It was real. It was my crappy apartment light bulb. If I let him mark me now, in a hormonal frenzy on my kitchen floor, I would never know if he loved me. I would only know that he owned me. No, I choked out. Bram didn't hear me. His teeth grazed my skin, testing the texture, preparing to sink in. No! I didn't just say it. I screamed it. And then I did the only thing I could think of. I stomped on his foot. Hard.
with the heel of my boot. Bram roared, not in pain, but in shock. His grip loosened for a fraction of a second. That was all I needed. I ducked under his arm, scrambling away from the refrigerator. I almost slipped on the linoleum, my legs shaking so badly they felt like jelly. "Veda!" Bram bellowed, spinning around. His eyes were wild, fully gold, the whites completely gone. "Get back here!" "I'm not a snack!" I yelled back, grabbing my keys off the counter. "And I'm not a heat-induced one-night stand!" "You can't run from this!" he shouted, taking a step toward me. The air around him crackled with visible power. "It's biology, Veda! It's fate!" "Then fate can wait until I'm sober!" I didn't run to the bedroom. I ran to the door. I threw the deadbolt, yanked it open, and sprinted into the hallway. I didn't wait for the elevator. I hit the stairwell door, my boots clanging against the concrete steps as I raced up. I needed air. I needed cold. I needed to get away from the intoxicating scent of sandalwood and obsession before I turned around and begged him to ruin me. I burst out onto the roof of my building. The night air hit me like a slap in the face. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked my clothes instantly. I stumbled to the ledge, gripping the rough brick, gasping for breath. The city lights blurred through the rain. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Mate, mate, mate. "Shut up!" I screamed at my own heart. "I am in charge here." But as the wind whipped my hair across my face, I felt a shadow fall over me. A presence so heavy it blocked out the rain. I turned around slowly. Bram was standing by the roof access door. He hadn't run. He wasn't out of breath. He was just there. The predator who had effortlessly tracked his prey. Chapter 15. The Hunt. The rain soaked his white shirt, making it translucent, plastering it to the sculpted muscle beneath. Water dripped from his dark hair, running down the sharp planes of his face. He looked terrifying. He looked beautiful. "You ran," he said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was flat, calm, and terrifyingly empty. "You felt the bond snap into place. You felt the heat rising, and you ran." "I needed to think!" I shouted over the wind, wrapping my arms around myself. I was shivering, but not from the cold. The heat inside me was still raging, fighting against the chill of the rain. "There is nothing to think about," Bram said, walking toward me. He moved deliberately, one step at a time, closing the distance on the wet gravel roof. "We are compatible. We are fated. Why is that so hard for you to accept?" "Because I don't want to be compatible," I cried, backing up until my heels hit the low wall of the ledge. "I want to be chosen, Bram. I want you to want me because I'm funny, or smart, or because I challenged you. Not because some mystical wolf god decided our DNA matches." Bram stopped 5 feet away. The gold in his eyes was swirling, warring with the amber. He wiped the rain from his face with a rough hand. "You think this is just biology?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "Veda, I have met 1,000 women. Models, actresses, alphas. I never felt a damn thing. Not a spark, not a twitch." He took another step. "Then I met you. You poked me in the chest. You called me a stripper. You looked at me like I was a nuisance, not a king." He laughed, a harsh, wet sound. "I fell for you before the bond even woke up. The biology is just catching up to what I already knew." My breath hitched. You mean that?" "I don't lie," he said softly.
especially not to you." He reached out his hand, palm up, an invitation. "Come with me," he said. "Your apartment is too small. The scent is too strong there. It's driving us both mad. Let me take you somewhere neutral, somewhere safe."
Safe? I let out a hysterical laugh. You are the least safe thing on this roof, Bram.
"I will never hurt you," he vowed, his eyes locking onto mine. "I might hunt you. I might chase you, but I will cut off my own hand before I let it harm you." I looked at his hand. Rainwater pooled in his palm. I looked at his face, wet, desperate, and open. I was tired of running. I was tired of fighting the pull. I stepped forward and placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine instantly, tight and warm. He didn't pull me into a hug. He simply turned, keeping me tethered to him, and led me toward the stairwell. "Where are we going?" I asked, struggling to keep up with his long strides as we descended. "The penthouse," he said. "The car is waiting downstairs." "The penthouse?" I frowned. "That's not neutral ground, Bram. That's your fortress." He stopped on the landing, looking back at me with a dark, promising smirk. "Exactly," he said. "If I'm going to lose my mind, I prefer to do it on Egyptian cotton sheets." The drive was silent. The tension in the back of the SUV was thick enough to cut with a knife. We sat on opposite sides of the seat, soaked and breathing heavy, staring at each other. Every bump in the road, every brush of our knees, sent a fresh wave of desire crashing through me. When the elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse, the silence broke. Bram stepped out, pulling me with him. He marched to the massive front door, scanned his hand, and pushed it open. As soon as we were inside, he slammed the door shut and engaged the deadbolt. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He turned to me, his back against the door, blocking the exit. "No more running, Veda," he breathed, the gold returning to his eyes with a vengeance. "We are done talking." Chapter 16. The Attempted Claim. The penthouse was exactly as I remembered it from the night we met. Velvet furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and the scent of money. But tonight, it felt different. It felt like a cage. A very, very expensive cage. "You're shivering," Bram noted. He didn't ask if I was cold. He simply walked over to me, his movements fluid and predatory. He reached out and gripped the lapels of my soaked blazer. "Let me help you," he whispered. Before I could protest, he slid the jacket off my shoulders, letting it drop to the floor with a wet thud. Then his hands went to the buttons of my shirt. "Bram!" I gasped, my hands flying up to cover his. "Wait!" "I can't wait," he growled, brushing my hands aside like they were feathers. "I have waited my entire life for this moment. For you." He popped the first button, then the second. His knuckles grazed the skin of my chest, leaving trails of fire. I should have stopped him. I should have kicked him or yelled or demanded a contract. But the heat was back, crashing over me like a tidal wave. The sheer proximity of him, the heat radiating from his wet shirt, the smell of rain and arousal, short-circuited my brain. "You are so beautiful," he murmured, pushing the wet shirt off my shoulders. It fell to the floor, leaving me in my lace bra and damp jeans.
Bram stepped back, his eyes raking over me. He looked like a starving man presented with a banquet. He tore at his own shirt, buttons flying across the room, ripping the fabric in his haste to get it off. When he was bare-chested, the sight of him made my knees give out. Muscles rippled under bronzed skin, scars silvered against the tan, and the tattoo of a wolf pack spanned his heart. He was magnificent. He was lethal. He closed the distance between us in a single stride. He didn't be gentle. He swept me up into his arms, my legs instinctively wrapping around his waist. I buried my face in his neck, licking the rainwater off his skin. He groaned, a deep, animalistic sound that vibrated through my entire body. He carried me to the velvet sofa, the same one where I had first rejected him. He laid me down, following me down instantly, his heavy body covering mine, pinning me into the soft fabric.
"Veda,"
he panted, his hips grinding against mine. The friction was unbearable.
"Tell me to stop. Tell me to stop right now.
Or I swear to the goddess I never will." I looked up at him. His hair was dripping onto my face. His eyes were blazing suns. "Don't stop," I whispered. It was the permission he needed. He kissed me. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was a claiming. His lips crushed mine, his tongue demanding entry, tasting me, owning me. I kissed him back with equal desperation, my fingers digging into the muscles of his back, scratching, pulling him closer. His hands roamed over my body, rough and frantic. He unsnapped my jeans. He pushed the lace of my bra aside. Every touch was electric, burning away the cold of the rain, burning away my logic.
Mine,"
he muttered against my mouth.
"You are mine."
He moved down, kissing my jaw, my throat, the slope of my shoulder. He found the spot, the sensitive curve where the neck meets the shoulder, the place where alphas mark their mates. I felt his breath, hot and fast against the skin. I felt the sharp point of his canines grazing the surface. The instinct to submit was overwhelming. My head fell back to the side, bearing the spot for him. My body arched up, offering myself to the king.
"Say it,"
he growled against my skin, his teeth scraping lightly, sending a jolt of pleasure pain through me.
"Say you're mine, Veda."
The word was on my tongue. The bond was pulling, screaming at me to complete the circuit, to let him bite me, to let him bind his soul to mine forever. But as I looked past his shoulder, through the massive glass window, I saw my reflection. I saw a woman pinned beneath a king, a woman about to be branded, a woman who had spent her whole life fighting to be seen as more than just a pretty face. If he bit me now, in the heat of lust, would he ever truly know me? Or would he just know the bond? Bram's jaw opened. I felt the pressure of his teeth. He was seconds away from breaking the skin. The cliff edge was right there, and I had to decide if I was going to jump. Chapter 17. The halt. The pressure of his teeth against my skin was a promise. It was the edge of a cliff, and falling meant soaring, meant never being lonely again, meant belonging to the most powerful creature in the city. My blood sang for it. My heart hammered a rhythm of surrender. "Do it," the instinct whispered. "Let him take the burden. Let him be the king." But as his jaw tightened, ready to pierce the skin and seal my fate, a single cold thought pierced the haze of lust. If I fall now, I never get back up. I wasn't a queen. I wasn't a mate. I was Veda. And I had promised myself a long time ago that I would never belong to anyone who didn't know the color of my eyes before they knew the taste of my blood. Stop. The word was a whisper, breathless and broken. But in the silence of the penthouse, it sounded like a gunshot. Bram froze. His breath hitched against my neck. His teeth were still there, resting dangerously on the pulse point. But he didn't bite down. He went perfectly still, his body vibrating with a tension so high I thought he might shatter. "Bram," I said, my voice gaining a fraction more strength. I lifted my hand, heavy as lead, and placed it flat against his chest, right over his heart. The same spot I had poked him that first night. I said, "Stop." I pushed. It wasn't a hard push. Against his massive granite-like weight, it shouldn't have moved him an inch. But the intent behind it hit him harder than a physical blow. Bram pulled back. He lifted his head slowly, his movements jerky and uncoordinated, like a machine malfunctioning. He looked down at me. His eyes were wild, the gold swirling in a chaotic storm of confusion and hurt. His chest heaved, his shirt hanging in tatters around his waist. "What?" he rasped, the word sounding like it was torn from his throat. "Veda, we need. I know what we need," I said, my voice trembling as I scrambled backward on the velvet sofa, putting distance between us. I pulled my knees to my chest,
trying to cover my exposed skin, trying to hide the tremors racking my body. "But I don't want it like this." "Like this?" Bram roared, the sound echoing off the glass walls. He sat up, raking his hands through his hair, looking at me with a mix of fury and devastation. "Like what? With passion? With instinct? The bond is screaming for this. You feel it. Don't lie to me and tell me you don't feel it." "I feel it," I yelled back, tears finally spilling over. "I feel like I'm burning alive. I want you so much it scares me. But that's the point, Bram. It's the bond." I scrambled off the sofa, my legs shaking so bad I almost fell. I grabbed his discarded shirt from the floor, mine was too far away, and pulled it on, buttoning it with fumbling fingers. It smelled like him. It swallowed me whole. "I am not a transaction," I said, turning to face him, "and I am not a biological reflex. If you mark me now, right here, while we're drunk on hormones and rain, then that's all I'll ever be. Your mate, your possession, the inevitable result of a genetic lottery." Bram stood up. He loomed over the room, a dark, devastating force of nature. "You are not a possession. You are my soul." "You don't even know me," I cried, stepping back as he took a step forward. "You know I'm bold. You know I speak French. But do you know what I'm afraid of? Do you know why I work so hard? Do you know my middle name? Do you know me, Bram? Or do you just love that I'm the one person who didn't bow?" He stopped. His mouth opened, then closed. The gold in his eyes flickered, the amber slowly bleeding back in as the human side of him wrestled for control. He started, then stopped. He looked at his hands, then at me. "You want to claim me," I whispered, wiping the tears from my cheeks. "But you haven't earned me. You think because the moon goddess or whatever put a string between us, the work is done. You think you can just skip the courtship, skip the questions, skip the knowing." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every cell in my body wanted to run back into his arms. "I won't be a queen by default, Bram, and I won't be a wife by accident." Bram looked at me, really looked at me, for a long, agonizing minute.
The aggression slowly drained out of his posture, leaving him looking raw and exposed. He looked at the oversized shirt I was wearing, his shirt, and a flicker of pain crossed his face. "You're rejecting me," he said, his voice hollow. "You're walking away." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not rejecting you. I'm rejecting the shortcut." I walked to the door. I didn't look back at the view. I didn't look at the velvet sofa. I looked at the handle of the door, praying my hand was steady enough to turn it. "I'm going home, Bram. Alone." "Veda!" he called out. I froze. My hand hovered over the latch. "If you walk out that door," he said, his voice low and dangerous, vibrating with a new kind of intensity, "do not think for a second that I will let you go. You want to be earned? Fine." I turned my head slightly, catching his silhouette against the city lights. "But be warned," he whispered, the darkness creeping back into his tone. "I don't lose, and I don't give up. If you want a war, Veda, I'm going to bring the whole damn army." "Good," I whispered, pushing the door open. "I like a challenge." I stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, cutting off my view of the Alpha King standing alone in his tower, I slid down to the floor and finally let myself breathe. The chase wasn't over. It had just begun. Chapter 18. The New Contract. I didn't sleep. The ghost of his teeth on my neck kept me awake longer than the caffeine. When I walked into elite events the next morning, I expected to be fired. I expected to find my desk packed up, my access card revoked, and Mr. Henderson weeping into a handkerchief because the king had pulled his funding. I had, after all, left the wealthiest man in the city blue-balled in his own penthouse. But when I stepped off the elevator, the office wasn't in chaos. It was silent. Every head turned. Every phone was down. Mr. Henderson was standing by the reception desk, looking less like a man about to fire me and more like a man witnessing a religious event. "Veda," he squeaked, pointing a trembling finger toward my office. He's in there." My stomach did a traitorous flip. I adjusted my blazer, a psychological armor more than a physical one, and marched down the hall. I didn't knock. I pushed the door open. Bram was there, but he wasn't sitting on my desk this time. He wasn't dominating the space with that suffocating alpha arrogance. He was standing by the window, looking at the view of the alleyway my cheap office afforded. He turned when I entered. He looked tired. The polished, untouchable god was gone. His hair was slightly messy. His jaw was shadowed with stubble. And he wasn't wearing a suit jacket. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt that hugged his chest and dark jeans. He looked human. He looked devastating. "You're here," I said, closing the door and leaning against it. "I thought you'd send a lawyer, or a demolition crew." "I considered the demolition crew," Bram admitted, a small, wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But I realized destroying the building where you work might be counterproductive to my new strategy." "And what strategy is that?" I asked, crossing my arms to hide the fact that my hands were shaking. "Hostile takeover?" "Submission," he said softly. The word hung in the air. My breath hitched. Bram walked over to my desk.
He picked up a thick manila folder lying there. I recognized it. It was the contract for his birthday gala, the one giving me unlimited budget and control. He ripped it in half. The sound of tearing paper was loud in the small room. He dropped the pieces into my trash can. "I don't want you to work for me, Veda," he said, walking around the desk until he was standing in front of me. He respected the line. He stopped 3 feet away. "I don't want an employee. I don't want a subordinate. And I realized last night, I don't want a subject." "Then what do you want?" I whispered. "I want to apply for the open position," he said. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. I unfolded it cautiously. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a legal document. It was a handwritten list. Name: Bram Thane. Likes: expensive scotch, winning, and women who yell at me in French. Dislikes: the press, empty penthouses, and sleeping alone. Weakness: a certain brunette with a sharp tongue and a fear of heights. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring slightly. "What is this?" "It's me," Bram said, his voice rough. "You said I hadn't earned you. You said I tried to skip the knowing. So, this is me, starting at the beginning. No titles, no money, just the man." I looked up at him. The gold in his eyes was settled now, warm and steady like honey. "You think a list makes up for trying to bite me?" I asked, though my voice lacked its usual bite. "No," he said. "The list is just the application. The interview starts tonight." He took a step closer, closing the gap. This time, I didn't back away. "Dinner," he proposed. "Not in Paris. There's a taco truck on 5th that you mentioned once. We stand in line. I pay with cash. We talk." "A taco truck?" I raised an eyebrow, fighting the smile that was threatening to break through. "The Alpha King eating street corn?" "I'll eat cardboard if you're sitting across from me," he vowed seriously. "I told you, Veda, I'm going to win, but I'm going to do it your way." He reached out, his hand hovering. "So, do I get the job?" I looked at his hand, the hand that could crush steel, now waiting patiently for mine. I thought about the fear, the flight, the overwhelming heat. And then I thought about the man who fixed my sink and threatened a chef for dumplings. I placed my hand in his. "It's a probationary period," I warned him. "One wrong move, one alpha command, and you're fired." Bram grinned, and it was the most beautiful, dangerous thing I had ever seen. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing the knuckles. "Understood, boss." He didn't let go of my hand as we walked out of the office, past the gaping Mr. Henderson, and to the elevator. When the doors opened, Bram pressed the button for the lobby. He turned to me, his eyes dancing with mischief. "I'll pick you up at 7, he said. I leaned back against the mirrored wall, finally letting my guard down, letting the thrill of the chase wash over me. I looked him up and down, the jeans, the t-shirt, the predatory grace that no amount of dressing down could hide. "Make it 8, I said, hitting the button to close the doors between us. "And Bram?" He caught the door with his hand before it could shut, raising an eyebrow. "Yes?" "Don't wear a shirt," I smirked. "I hear the entertainment at this taco truck is strictly private dance only." Bram threw his head back and laughed, a rich, victorious sound that echoed down the shaft as the doors finally slid shut, leaving me smiling like a fool, ready to give the king the run of his life. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought mistaking the king for a stripper was humiliating, wait until you hear this next one. This girl actually thought the Alpha King was a chair. She sat on his lap, and the furniture grabbed her waist and roared. It is wild. Click the video on your screen right now to hear him growl, "Mine."